In this segment, we're going to have a look at the way to prune pear trees. The training and pruning of pear cultivars follows different variations on the vertical axis theme. Pear tree training employs a strong central leader with 18 to 22 structural branches and is one of the systems used in pear production. Shoots growing from the central leader that are not used as structural branches, as well as those growing on the base of the structural branches, should be removed to keep the light chimney open. This clear area allows light into the center of the tree. Branches of pear trees are kept just above the horizontal using strings to tie branches into position. Each variety of pear tree has its own bearing habits. There are two kinds of wood in a tree: structural limbs, which is the central leader and the branches, and then bearing wood, the wood that bears the crop. While the structural limb treatment is the same for all pear varieties, the wood that will bear the fruit is treated differently. Packham's Triumph bears fruit on spurs that are on 2-year and older wood. They are pruned to a system known as the 1-2-3 method. Step 1 is to leave 1-year-old wood on the bearing unit to spur up for the following year. Step 2 is to cut into the growth ring between the 2-year-old and 1-year-old wood. Step 3 is rejuvenating older bearing units back to the structural limb. The rosemary variety is pruned in the same way, except you don't cut into the ring. You cut a bit deeper than the ring because on rosemary you want stiff bearing units, as it is very prone to rub marks and you don't want the bearing unit blowing around in the wind. Bonchretien trees are tip bearers, producing fruit on the end of 1-year-old wood. Leave short 1-year-old wood which is less than 40 centimeters with a terminal fruit bud that will blossom and bear fruit. Rejuvenate anything older than 2 years of age by cutting back to a dirty cut as near to the structural branch as possible. Forel trees bear for many years on the same bearing wood. It's a very strong spur bearer.
We would remove anything thicker than 1/3 the thickness of the structural limb, so-called fork. We would remove that. Last year you can see one was removed there and it did a good job. We would then come and start at the tip. We could just make sure the leaders go in there. I wouldn't cut back into the leader, and then I remove all the 1-year-old wood. Remember, Forel doesn't need new wood. It can crop for many, many years on the same old wood. So we would remove 1-year-old wood. There are places where we might want to build another bearing unit, so we'd leave that 1-year-old wood. Those two places I would leave the 1-year-old wood, but the rest is just removing 1-year-old wood and cutting into the ring, removing all the 1-year-old wood. So I've left 2 shoots where I've got a gap to get some spurs, but for the rest I've removed all the 1-year-old wood. Remembering that Forel can crop for many, many years on the same old bearing wood.
Abata Fattel bears on 2-year-old spurs.
Okay, Abata Fattel, we'll take away any forks that may be on the structural limb. We then come along and remember it's in blossom, we're cutting back to a fat reproductive bud. If it hasn't got a bud, we'll cut into the ring, it'll give us a bud next year, but we're cutting back hard to a fat reproductive bud. So it's a really hard prune, Abata Fattel. We've cut back to a fat reproductive bud, cut back to a fat reproductive bud, cut back. We've got to keep on cutting back to fat reproductive buds. Even that one there, cut that away, cut that away, cut this back to a fat reproductive bud. We must cut all these that have got buds here. We must reduce the amount of blossom and we must cut back into it. This one has got a fat reproductive bud there, we'll come back to it there, and we'll clean out the chimney of the tree. So When I've finished the Bata Fattel pruning, it must not look very pretty. It must be, as one can see, a fairly aggressive prune, cutting back hard into the 2-year-old spurred up units and leaving as much 1-year-old wood that can spur up for next year.
Bury Bosc and Bury Hardy are strong spur bearers. They will bear on older spurs and can be rejuvenated in the 4th or 5th season back to the structural limb. Well, there we are, a look at pruning the various pear cultivars. Please note that all of our pruning programs are designed to give the general theory related to the pruning activity. Please adapt the information to your own situation and consult a consultant to advise you in your orchard if you have further queries.